Today's Locked On Bama is flippin' fantastic. You'll see what I mean.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Thank you for making us your first listen when it comes to all things Bama and podcast in general. And really, you probably listen to us before you even talk to your significant other, and I think that's wonderful. Jimmy, we're going to talk several things today. We're going to talk about Andrew Bone has a good article on your own site about flip candidates, what my lead-in was about. And we're also going to talk NFL schedule release. We've also going to talk about a new yet old name on the Alabama roster, and maybe work in some softball if we do it. But right now, let's talk about Andrew Bone's flip candidate article here. And look, the first one is somebody we've talked about on before when people do these flip articles, and that's DeMarcus Riddick. But it feels like DeMarcus Riddick, who's number 2 linebacker in the country from Chilton County in Alabama, he has been committed to Georgia for quite some time. But it's really beginning to feel like this is going to happen, that he is eventually going to flip to Alabama, right?
Yeah, it's looking pretty optimistic. Hasn't happened yet, so until it happens, hasn't happened until it happens. I know that's master of the obvious, but I think it needs to be said in a flip type situation where he's committed to Georgia. He's not committed to Georgia Southern. I mean, he's committed to the defending back-to-back national champions. So we have to convince, or Alabama's got to convince DeMarcus Riddick that Alabama's a better choice for him. I think so far it's looking good. I expect it to happen. For those unfamiliar with DeMarcus Riddick's game, he's a typical linebacker size, probably about 6'3", 225 right now. I think of him as an inside linebacker. He can play inside or out. As most of these versatile, athletic, new age linebackers, they're really good athletes, so they can play more than one spot. Potentially a Sam linebacker outside, but in my mind, he's more of a Mike or a Will linebacker in the Alabama system, and will play inside. I mentioned he's sort of a new wave linebacker. By that, I mean, our idea, me and Luke are old, so our idea of a linebacker is sort of like Dick Butkus, although we're not quite that old, but Mike Singletary or Sam Mills, just some sort of really thick inside guy. Patrick Willis, who's a great inside backer, thick, big, takes on fullbacks, doesn't mind mixing it up with offensive guards, sort of owns the tackle box area with physicality. Today's middle linebackers are totally different, Luke. Today, it's about pass coverage. I mean, it makes sense. It's just a lot of this is simple math, as Nate Oates would tell you from basketball, because we know about how he makes basketball so much about math. Well, football is about math too. And when you play a team that throws the ball more than they run the ball, then it makes more sense that you devote most of your assets to defending the pass and not defending the run. So today's inside linebacker isn't like a decade ago. Today's inside linebacker can run and cover, can fall into coverage. They're basically, let's be honest, they're big safeties. They're big safeties. They do things that safeties used to do. Mark Barron, Landon Collins, these were safeties for us a decade ago. Really, they're inside linebackers now. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's the best way to explain it. So DeMarcus Riddick is like that. He is highly athletic. He'll be good dropping into coverage. He'll be good in man-to-man coverage. But at the same time, there's some real physicality there, because you can't get away from that entirely. The other team is going to run the ball. And when they run the ball, they're probably running it up the middle. So Riddick can do those things as well.
Yeah, I really want him to flip. And honestly, it's probably redundant to talk about today because, we've talked about him a lot, but, I like hearing about him. I think he's awesome. I do want to talk about some of these other guys. We talked about Peyton Woodyard the other day. He's on this list, and so I don't want to rehash that one. 2 other guys.
That's why we talked about him the other day, right? We have a pretty. Alabama's got a good chance. I would say the chance of flipping Woodyard is slightly less than flipping Riddick, but still a good chance.
All right. The next guy on this list is somebody I have not been associating with Alabama at all. Asaya Faga. Is that how you say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Faga,
Um,
yes, he's a Samoan of Samoan descent, and originally from the West, but is I believe his dad is in the military. And Luke, you're more from that corner of the world a little bit, but I believe Phenix City is very close to a big Columbus, Georgia, maybe.
it is. Yeah, it
Right.
is.
So
And yeah. And by the way, he's at Phenix City. He's a 3-star. He's committed to Utah. If anybody beats Phenix City this year, that's on Phenix City. Good Lord, they're loaded.
they are. What a team. I can't wait. And Thompson might be not down, but not what they were. So I think that's fascinating. Thompson versus Central Phoenix City this year, the two best big schools in Alabama. But Central Phoenix City is so loaded, it's nuts. And Isaiah Faga is another reason why he is I would say a little undersized defensive lineman. He's really interesting, partly because of the Samoan descent. We've had more and more experience with that at Alabama with Tua and others. But Isaiah Faga is living in Phoenix City, Alabama. His dad, I believe, is an Army Ranger and was obviously deployed or stationed, and that's going on a foreign deployment this summer and won't be around for Isaiah to make trips. Now, he spent a lot of time out west, and as we know, there's a gigantic Samoan population in Utah and Salt Lake City. The University of Utah always has a number of Samoans on their roster, and I'm sure that that feels very comfortable for him. So here's a kid from Alabama, or I say from Alabama. He relocated to Alabama. He's committed to Utah. And it's so rare that Alabama is working to flip a kid committed to Utah that's from Alabama. And Alabama's not working to flip him just yet. I think what he is, Luke, is it's fair to say this: Alabama is recruiting him hard. They talk to him all the time. They have a great relationship with him. They want to see him in camp this summer. And should he impress them as they project he will, then Alabama will work to flip him as hard as they work to flip DeMarcus Riddick, from Georgia. So, and Peyton Woodyard. So Faga is not a priority for Alabama at the moment, but he is being recruited by Alabama. They're extremely interested. He's a guy they would put on a short list of, we're excited to see this kid in camp. Again, a little undersized. I believe he's listed at 6'2", 280. Any defensive lineman that's listed at 6'2", I wonder if he really is 6'2". That's another thing that these camps are very valuable for. Alabama does not look at a kid's listed size, even on Bama Insider. Alabama doesn't look at a listed size and assumes, oh, well, this must be correct. No, Alabama measures these kids carefully and in every way that they can. So I think verifying size is another huge thing with him because listed at 6'2", 280, you wonder, does that mean under 6'1" and 265? So they got to check that stuff out. But he's a promising. He's not one I would put today, Luke, on, hey, put him on the Alabama commitment list. I project him to sign with Alabama, but he is a strong maybe.
I mean, look, strong maybes mean you're a pretty good prospect at Nick Saban's Alabama Crimson Tide. So I think that'd be pretty cool to look at.
Well, Utah's good. Utah's no slouch. It's not like Utah takes a lot of I mean, that's just not a program we know well here, but Utah is annually the most underrated team, aren't they? I mean, annually underrated. They outperform expectations every year. And I haven't made my official projections yet for every conference, Luke, but I know there's a lot of USC infatuation out there. I say be careful where you pick against Utah.
Yeah, they got Cam Rising back. They just got Landon King from the transfer portal in Auburn. They got dudes. So yeah, Jimmy, let me tell everybody about Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious snack that won't give you all the sugar and all the calories, that's a Built Bar. That's a Built Bar. That's what you need to do is go get you a Built Bar. You can get them at Walmart, Amazon, Sam's Club, Lifetime, Built.com. You can get them all these different places. They're healthy and taste amazing. I don't know how in the world they do it. It's magical, I'm telling you. It's like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, but there's no chunky people. That's what's great about it. And it's all good for you. It all tastes delicious. Only 4 grams of sugar, 17 whopping grams of protein, all the macros you could possibly want. or none of the macros you could possibly want. Either way you want to go, because I'm not sure what a macro is. But so I'm trying to sell it both ways.
It's bigger than a micro.
It's bigger than a micro. And there we go. That's all I know about it. So go to built.com or go to Amazon or go to Sam's Club, go to Walmart. You'll love Built bars. I'm telling you, they're delicious, nutritious, delicious. Go get you one. Jimmy, on tomorrow's podcast, if we have one tomorrow, may not have one tomorrow, may not, this may be like the last of the week and then we whip back over. Might do a quick one on the schedules when they get released tonight. We're going to talk a little bit. Some of the schedule stuff is leaking out already. So, yeah, we'll talk about that here in the final segment. Right now, though, want to talk about one of the more interesting characters that's been added to the Alabama roster. That is Roq Montgomery or Roq Montgomery. It's like he's the first Alabama player or Alabama associate since Joey Freshwater to have two names on the team. But please explain what's going on with Roq Montgomery, why the name change, and what do you think his prospects are for playing this year?
Yeah, I'm not 1,000% sure on why, so I'll try to stay away from that. But the first name's easy. When we recruited this young man, he was known to the recruiting world as Ryqueze, Ryqueze, Ryqueze. But with that name that he's had since birth on his birth certificate, his nickname has been Roq, and obviously he's a very large offensive lineman. So his nickname forever has been, because there's a Q in his name, he has always spelled Roq, R-O-Q. Well, his nickname, as far as he's concerned, is every bit as prevalent in his life as Jaquincy McKinstry, who's known to the rest of us as Kool-Aid McKinstry. So Ryqueze goes by Roq. He has his whole life. All his friends and family refer to him as Roq. So he just wants to go by Roq, no different than Jaquincy McKinstry goes by Kool-Aid. So that's the first name. And of course, he spells it R-O-Q because there's a Q in Ryqueze. His last name, he changed legally. I believe this is illegal. He was born with the last name McElderry and is switched to Montgomery, I assume over some sort of family reasons. We've had players do that before. As a matter of fact, pretty significant players. A lot of old timers might remember Derek Lassick was originally Derek Owens. And then Derek Owens became Derek Owens Lassick before finally his senior year going, you know what? Let's just go with Derek Lassick. So that's happened. And you might remember an outside linebacker around the Shula era, Juwan Simpson. When we recruited Juwan Simpson, his name was Juwan Garth. And he changed his last name to Simpson after arriving to Alabama and was a good player. So this isn't crazy, unprecedented. It's happened before at Alabama. But it is confusing for some people who don't follow it every single day, like Luke and I do, that we recruited a kid named Ryqueze McElderry, and now on the roster, there's a Roq Montgomery kid. And he's actually an interesting prospect. He was committed to Georgia very early in the process. He's from Anniston, Alabama. Georgia offered before Alabama did. When he got that prestigious Georgia offer and didn't have one from Alabama, he committed to the Bulldogs. And he stayed committed to them for quite some time before Alabama had him in camp, or Alabama, actually had him in camp the year before. Alabama decided to elevate him to we really want this kid. And so Alabama pushed for his commitment much later than Georgia did, and eventually won out. And he flipped from Georgia to Alabama, much like we had talked about earlier in the show with DeMarcus Riddick and Peyton Woodyard. Alabama's hoping to flip them from Georgia like they did with Roq. So Roq flipped. And he enrolled early, so he is a student in Alabama. He just completed the spring semester, went through spring practice. He's an offensive lineman. He spent the entire spring practice playing guard. A couple of promising things about him, though, Luke. He's apparently on the Jaheim Otis weight loss plan. Roq showed up well north of 360 or 370, and my understanding has lost all the way down to like 330, 325. He's lost a lot of bad weight this semester, which is very promising for his future. I'm sure they're going to focus on this weight loss for now and then work on building him back up later. And again, he's playing guard. One interesting thing about him, I sort of project him eventually to play center I think that might be a really good spot for him. Center's a little crowded right now with Seth and James Brockermeyer, and Darren Dalcourt, of course, would play center if Seth got hurt. So center's a little crowded, but I think after Darren Dalcourt cycles out and Seth cycles out, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Roq playing center. Good kid, very popular on the team in the clubhouse, and I don't think we're going to see him this fall. I think while they're working on reshaping his body, he's the ideal red shirt. However, we have some depth issues on the offensive line, so I'm going to say he's a red shirt, but he's probably 2 sprained ankles away from having to play at least as a 2 this fall.
I don't know how in the world Jaheim Otis and Roq Montgomery haven't scored a Nutrisystem ad yet. Like those pictures where they always show like the frumpy kind of chunky person like holding a milkshake and a hamburger, and they're like looking like this, and then the next picture is like they're in a bikini doing this. That's what we need.
Gosh, I'm not sure that's what we need, but if there's NIL money in it, I wish them well.
Hey, for enough NIL money, there's no telling. There's no telling what you can get.
We'd be out there. Of course, we'd make the swimsuit. We'd make the swimsuit issue, me and you.
Oh man, there's no question. All right, let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk some NFL schedule leaks. We're going to talk maybe a little softball and I don't know, some miscellaneous. And we're sorry, just as I get a phone call. But
Roq.
Yeah, that's Nutrisystem saying don't do that again.
That's Nutrisystem saying, hey, give me Roq's number. They might have got him confused with The Rock. They'll get excited about him as a pitch man, I'm sure. Although he doesn't look like he's got a whole lot of body fat to me.
All right, I'm going to skip over the softball stuff because I want to tell a story. I'm going to tell this story very quickly. I know I've told it to you before, but some people may not have heard it. Toro Freeman is a linebacker that played for Auburn from Benjamin Russell right here in Alexander City a while back. Good guy. It played for Auburn, but don't hold that against him. Anyway, so one day, my buddy Justin Clayton, who was running Toro Freeman's website, got an email from, I think, the Coosa County Elementary School or something. And it said, we really would like to have you come and speak to us and just talk about your success and all this stuff. And my buddy Justin was like, wow, this is amazing. Okay, this is great. So my buddy Justin, who's very, very smart and does a great job with all the videography and all this stuff, and he's really done well for himself, a lot of wedding videos and works here in Alexander City. He's got a fantastic job, does a lot of great things. So Justin went to Coosa County and he set up, and when he got out of his car, like everybody was sort of staring at him and like looking at him, and then he takes all this stuff and he's like, yeah, everybody's loving this. And he walks in and he has this whole PowerPoint presentation. And he talks about how, pulled himself up by his bootstraps and work hard, and you can make a lot of money selling video, or you can just find a passion, do what you like, 30 minutes of this. And he did all this, and the kids were sort of like, okay. And, everybody was sort of like unenthused, but like mildly interested. So after his event, Justin was walking back to his car and he was like, I nailed that. I nailed that presentation. And one of the teachers who contacted him comes out there and goes, yeah, that was great, but we thought you were going to be Toro Freeman. And they wanted to.
I knew where that was going.
Yeah.
I knew where
Justin.
I've forgotten that story, and that is a great story. But yeah,
Justin the funny thing is, like, Toro is this jacked up, super athletic. I mean, like, don't screw with him looking guy. And Justin looks like a dude. I don't mean that. Justin looks like you and me. He just looks like a dude. You don't say, oh, when you see El Toro, you're like, that's El Toro Freeman.
They knew he wasn't El Toro Freeman when he parked his car and got out. I think
but Justin said, I did wonder why so many people had on Auburn jersey, but I thought they just realized I went to Auburn myself. So,
the best punchline would have been at the very end of the presentation, one of the little kids sticks up his hand and says, I've got a question. And Justin said, yes. And your question is? He's like, I'm sort of impressed by all this, sir, but why would they call you the Bull?
Or, good Lord, Cameron Newton really didn't have much to work with. He was on that 2010 team. But anyway, yeah, it was funny.
Wow, you can do all this and play inside linebacker in the SEC?
It's really an amazing story. But anyway, all right. So let's talk about Bryce Young. First game was released. Bryce Young with Carolina will be playing in Atlanta on September 10th. And here's what I'm wondering: how many Alabama fans out there are going to do this? Go to the Texas game, which could be a night game. Who knows? Go to the Texas game on Saturday, swing over, head to Atlanta, check out Bryce's first game in Carolina the next day. How many Bama fans?
I think I would put the over-under on it at no, reasonable number. 3,000. 3,000 Alabama fans will do Texas and Falcons Carolina in one weekend, and there will be another 3,000 Alabama fans that live in the Atlanta area that will choose to watch Panthers Falcons instead of going to Tuscaloosa. So in other words, I'm going to say there will be a minimum 6,000 Alabama fans in the Mercedes-Benz Dome that day rooting on Bryce that are there specifically for that reason, because he's the Alabama guy. Cool that Bryce's NFL regular season debut will take place in Atlanta, just right down the road. And of course, as we know, Bryce has had at least some success in that very building.
Oh, yeah. So true. Gosh, I didn't even think about that. That's awesome.
The beat Georgia in the SEC championship game in 2021. And, of course, Alabama won the SEC in 2020 as well when he was the number 2 quarterback behind Mac.
Yeah, I mean, he was there. Boy, that's awesome. I think I'm going to have to go. I think I'm just going to have to go because, I mean, I can't sit here on this podcast and say I think Bryce Young is the best player in Alabama history, then not go to his first game when his first game is in Atlanta, and I'm in Alabama.
One of the things we probably didn't talk about enough, although I remember we did mention it, Luke, but when he was drafted by Carolina, one of the cool things for Alabama fans is Carolina plays every year in Atlanta and in New Orleans. Every year,
Yep.
The Panthers will play a game in Atlanta and in New Orleans and those are the two most ideal locations for Alabama fans to go to a game. Really, the Alabama fans that live in Alabama or around Alabama. There's no doubt that the 3 easiest places to get to are Atlanta, Nashville, and New Orleans. And Bryce will be playing at 2 of those 3 every single year. So that's one of the pluses of where Bryce was drafted, being in the NFC South and playing the Saints and Falcons and Tampa Bay Buccaneers every year, home and away.
Yeah, and I think that Carolina plays Houston this year. I don't know exactly when that is. So that'll be Stroud against Bryce and Will Anderson against Bryce. So that's pretty cool. And of course, John.
That is cool.
Yeah, that is cool. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode.
We throw this last cool thing in too. The NBA lottery is coming up soon, and in terms of the team most likely to have the second pick in terms of the ping pong balls is Houston. So that has nothing to do with football, but Houston, the Rockets, could be the future home of Brandon Miller. So anytime I hear Houston now, I'm going to think Will Anderson, and maybe we'll be thinking of Brandon Miller.
That'd be kind of wild too. They could have Jabari Smith, Brandon Miller, and Corey Eason, who was from LSU, and he made second team all rookie team. So, geez, I mean, Houston will have some good young talent.
And that's just a projection. They're the team most likely to end up with the number 2 pick. But as we know, the ping pong ball bounces funny when it comes to the NBA lottery. I know
never happens.
They do that very soon, by the way. And that I think there's not a lot of Alabama fans, Luke, over the years that have like, hey, when is the ping pong ball? When do they announce the draft order? And there will be a lot of Alabama fans watching and that don't hardly ever watch that event. It usually takes place in the minutes before a significant playoff game.
All right, buddy. We may or may not have a podcast tomorrow. We'll let you know by putting a podcast out. And so
or not.
Or not. We'll let you know. Until then, roll tide.
Roll tide.